And you're all very welcome to the latest episode of The Racing Room. It's Ronan Groom here, and more importantly, it's Cheltenham week. And with me to bask in the ambience of the festival is Harry Stewart Moore, Anthony Kaminskis, and Tony Calvin, all full of that Cheltenham Eve glow. Time is tight for us this morning, so I'm not going to ask all the lads how they are. You just have to take my word for it that they're all in good form.
Miserable. We're all miserable.
Yeah. They're all miserable, yeah. It's funny, we actually hemmed and hawed about doing a podcast this time last week, but then so transpired, probably one of the busiest racing news weeks of the year. So here we are. But we're actually going to top and tail the podcast with Cheltenham chat. So we'll start with you, AK. You're making a beeline for Dublin Airport straight after this. The week stretched out before you. How are you feeling about this year's Cheltenham Festival?
Yeah, as always, I suppose the closer it gets, really looking forward to it. I always say, or I always think anyway, that the Tuesday of Cheltenham is probably the only day of the year that I could conceivably lose £1,000,000 on the day. So it's always a little bit filled with apprehension from my point of view. I have no intention or desire for that to occur. So we'll be keeping a close eye on things, and I suppose praying loads of favourites don't win on day one. I always think that's the day where it could be a disaster for the firm on course and off course. So. But yeah, really looking forward to it. A little bit different this year, not as many odds-on shots. I think there's going to be a couple. But yeah, looking forward to it, mate. Plenty going on, haven't we, on the website, online. I'm heading over there this afternoon. Myself and Joe are flying into Birmingham early this afternoon.
You're flying.
Yeah, mate.
Hey, what was your tweet about the Ulysses last night? The most esoteric tweet I think I've seen in quite some time.
Well, as I always say, or as my dad used to say to my mother, actually, randomly, he probably won't like this story, but if you've got a dog, you don't bark yourself. It was my dad's phrase.
Yes.
And the lads are going on the boat. Me and
Okay. No, it all makes sense now. Yeah. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, the background to it, Harry, is basically all the Irish ferries were knackered yesterday.
Right.
A lot of the horses were delayed at sea.
You don't put them on the Dublin Swift then, AK? It's too expensive, is it?
Well, it's a good job I didn't actually, mate, to be honest, because they were all cancelled because they're too big and fast. So the slow boat is more akin to
the slow boat to Holyhead.
So our start, yeah. No, I'll be honest with you, I think it was a timings and a van availability thing for each ferry. So, but we touched lucky. I think it's leaving at 11 o'clock. So I was slightly wrong in my prediction, a couple of hours too late, as usual. But yeah, the lads are heading over, and we'll join them there, and see what the story is tonight, and get to the track real early in the morning, and go from there and say a prayer.
Harry, I pride myself on knowing a few big words, but esoteric is a first timer for me now. Can you give us an explanation of what that means?
It means slightly random, and only a few people would know about it, which I think is fair enough when it comes to the timetable of the Dublin to Holyhead ferry.
Way of describing AK's tweets, I suppose. And Tony, I have you, or you have yourself down here for a bit of moaning about the incessant build up to Cheltenham and this movement of the final hurdle, which in fairness is actually a cause of a bit of angst on social media and stuff when the news came out yesterday.
No, once we get to the decks from knowing the decks for Tuesday, I actually love the week. I just hate all the build up. People sticking up scores of horses anti-post and cherry picking the ones that the price is shortened. I really dislike all the build up to it. But there was no bigger fan of it once we know the final fields and we get the betting and we can kick on from there. And yeah, as regards news stories in the last couple of days, Lee Mottershead did a very, very good spot yesterday. We're now going to have over a furlong running because they changed the kind of like where the final hurdle is. That may not sound like a big deal, but it does change the dynamic of races. So how Cheltenham didn't see fit to actually put out an official communication on that, and it was left to Lee to notice it is something that's probably regrettable. he boiled plenty of piss yesterday with normally quite sane people. So that was one thing. And Cheltenham were adamant they weren't going to water for Tuesday. Um, John Pullins said as much on Luck on Sunday. No need to water. Lo and behold, this morning they're going to put 4 to 5 mil on, because it's now good in places. So again, a miscommunication there. Not a big deal, both of them in the grand scheme of things, but it just goes to show if let punters know, they'll deal with it. People don't want any surprises when they've already had a bet.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is really, really poor. And then obviously, and it's right because there's a lot more of them, but people always say people do a disservice to punters. It does. I always think it does a disservice to the market. Does a disservice to bookies as well. Bookies want to have confidence in laying bets on horse racing as much as possible. From an integrity point of view, from a ground point of view, not knowing the information just means there's less confidence in the markets from both sides. So it blows my mind that they think that that's just not worth even informing the whole market, punters in particular, but the whole market.
Now, I tweeted out this morning that it just never occurred to me before. They just said they're going to water, and it's very similar to the Sandown situation we'll come on to in the racing view. They just said, no, we're going to water the good parts of the track to, presumably to make it good to salt like the other areas. But it's such a large expanse of racecourse. How do you identify the good areas, and then how do you specify where the watering goes? I mean, by the very nature of the track, you're going to be hitting the good to soft parts with the best will in the world with another 5 mil. So they're going to go softer as well as the good going softer as well. It's an area that gets people's backs up. Probably it shouldn't do to the degree it does, and I'm probably the number one villain there. But it's just unnecessary, kind of like bad feeling it causes.
You've just got to plot out where all the collapsed drains are and then just move away from there slightly. I think
Yeah.
that's the key.
If the water disappears, then you've got another problem. Yeah.
I get the watering thing. I think is an unenviable task, though. I think they're on a
100%, yeah.
absolutely, it's very hard. But
And
the movement of the hurdle, just quickly, Tony, was that a case of Lee Morris just being at the course and just literally seeing the hurdle and noticing that it's different?
it it would appear so. And
Some
people
spot.
asked him on the back of that, said, why have they done it? And the response he got was probably even more worrying. And presumably John Pullin told him. He said they had to move it because there's uh, an area, a wet area that hasn't really improved in the run up to the festival, which is quite worrying. The reason they did it is because there's a very, very wet area that they wanted to bypass, which is, again, it's people were linking it with a drain situation, the whole situation, but I think it's not linked. But even so, it's slightly concerning, isn't it? Why they've done it, and like I said, it's just the lack of communication. As regards to the watering, full well he's had trainers in his ear 24/7 since he said on Sunday morning he's not going to water. So that leads into the clerk of the course being the most unenviable job out there because he's got 40 or 50 trainers saying, put water on, please. And he's probably just had to cave in.
Had to do with them.
Indeed, we'll see how it'll play out during the week. I'm sure there'll be plenty of chatter about it. Tony, do you want to take us through the a quick fire racing review, and then we'll get stuck into some topics?
I do. Let me just call it up. Yeah, it's quite a somber start here. It was reported the death of jockey Sam Lee at the age of 27. I think everyone knows probably what's happened here, but as in all these things, it's not reported. So it's probably for others to comment on that tragedy. But the point-to-point authority put out a tweet, and yeah, it's just heartbreaking when a young man meets his end like that. But again, so like you said, it's probably not for me or others to comment that didn't know him. There was another death that French racing supremo Louis Romanet died at the age of 78. So, yeah, he was a massive figure in international racing. So yeah, he's gone. Veteran Sam Brown was retired in the horse racing ranks. So yeah, that was he was a kind of like veteran of about 8, 10. Well, I think now it was 11 years of racing. Yeah, so he'll be a big miss for some people. We had a lot going on off the track and in the court. There's ongoing court cases involving Evan Williams and Alan Spence, but we will deal with those once they are finalised. We had big news, racing news last week when Galopin Deschamps' dual Gold Cup winner was ruled out of the race this year. And we had some controversy on Saturday as Dan Skelton played the game in the Imperial Cup. Probably going to get a fine for his travels, but I'll spare you my lengthy take on that. Like I said, it's probably not a good look for racing that, but that was largely brushed under the carpet by the racing media. Probably didn't want to upset him or ask him any awkward questions with Cheltenham on the agenda. On the track, very quiet week. Like I mentioned earlier, there was some controversy over Sandown watering Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday ahead of their Saturday Imperial Cup card. Then they got 10 mil of rain on Friday. And they got 15 non-runners on the card. The first text I got on Saturday morning was from a racehorse trainer who was not happy. But I think this is one area where I think criticism might be a bit misplaced because, as with Cheltenham today, they didn't douse the whole course. They just did selected areas, and the rain wasn't forecast on Friday morning to the degree it turned out to be. So I have some sympathy with Andrew Cooper there, but a lot of trainers and were unhappy there. But that's the way it goes. I prefer them not to water at all, but like I said, trainers got to be mindful of getting your field sizes. We had a well back 5-4 Kempton winner disqualified as the jockey weighed in light in midweek. That was actually a fair gamble. A fair gamble, actually. It was a fair gamble on the show as well. So that would have pissed off a lot of people. I think I'm right in saying this. The double result doesn't apply to objections from the clerk of the scales. Is that right, Bronan, Anthony?
Wouldn't have a clue, to be honest with you.
Right.
I
Everyone was saying, well, no, we lost out because you get your double result, but there's two things there. One, I'm not entirely sure it applies to objection from the clerk of the scales, and two,
well,
not everybody does double result anymore.
yeah, 100%.
And some very big firms don't do it either.
We don't do it, Tony. We don't do it at all. We don't
Yeah.
do it either. It's rules of racing with us. I always think the weighing in light or heavy thing, or weighing in at a different weight. I always think probably shouldn't say these thoughts out loud. Maybe Harry, cover your ears. But if you were in,
You realize other people can hear this, do you?
you're the only barrier to getting the podcast published, though. So that's my only concern. But I always think if you were that way inclined, it's the easiest way to influence a racing result. To be honest with you, I wouldn't hypothetically jump off a horse at the last hurdle. Doing something with the weight cloth is I always think it's just one area of racing where it's fraught with danger from an integrity point of view.
Yeah.
Not obviously that's not the case here. So
Yeah, when I was at Betfair, that was the one area where we're always shit scared of. If you're weighing in light and not weighing
100%.
not weighing out properly, then you're a loser from that moment onwards, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. If somebody has that information and nobody else does, and the horses, I always thought hypothetically again, if you've got some tens on shot that's 30 lengths clear and you were that way inclined, like it's not ideal.
Yeah,
There
like
needs
I
to be
said.
some rule around it because it wouldn't take much to do something nefariously.
Yeah, and also you're talking about pre-race and in-race betting as well, so you can actually get a double whammy on it if you were so inclined. Obviously, you'd be flagged up, but if you
Yeah,
if you play dumb, then yeah, that's always been a massive area of concern, and I imagine it still would be. Yeah, just going on to with a view to Cheltenham. Gavin Cromwell, horses tend to grow a leg at this time of the year. Uh, he's been out of form pretty much all year, but he continues to come into a bit of form. Yesterday with his 12-1 chance, the lovely man winning the Leinster National, albeit a bit luckily with Built by Ballymore unseating at the last. But yeah, so maybe good news for a pointer to I know the way you're thinking. But yeah, that was the racing review. It's relatively low key on the track, but off the track there was some dark times.
Yeah. Let's kick on with the topics list, guys. And we're going to start off with this pretty seismic Frankie Dettori story, the development, I guess, in his ongoing case with bankruptcy here. So I'll just read you out this, and Harry, I might bring you in first to explain what's actually going on and what the ramifications might be for Dettori here. So Frankie Dettori will remain legally bankrupt for a further year after a judge at a specialist insolvency court ruled his bankruptcy should not be automatically discharged. At a hearing on Thursday, lawyers for the two trustees of Dettori's bankruptcy asked for the order to remain in place for a further year. Stefan Ramal, for the trustees, told the court in London that the former jockey has not complied and is still not complying with requests for information about his assets, including whether he owns properties abroad. Dettori did not appear at the hearing and was not represented. So, how serious is this, Harry, and what might be coming down the line, I guess, for Frankie here?
I mean, it's hard to know how serious something is really before you get to sort of end game in these circumstances, but it's not the kind of things you want said by the court. So the difficulty appears to be that so when you're made bankrupt, your assets vest in trustees and bankruptcy, and their duties are to your creditors. So they've got to try and maximize what you've got and pay it out to the people you owe money to insofar as they can. In order to do that, they have a number of powers to find out what you've got. And the first one they've got is to interview you, and that's how most bankruptcies start, is being interviewed by the trustees in bankruptcy. So he does appear to have attended an interview, and what the issue appears to be is that the trustees now think that there were assets, including foreign properties and a wine collection, that may not have been mentioned in that interview. A bankruptcy, generally speaking, the trustees have a year in which to get the assets, sell them, and distribute them to the creditors. If the court thinks that bankruptcy can be extended, and one of the reasons that it can be extended is if the court is persuaded that the bankrupt is not giving sufficient information about his assets or her assets, and that's where we are here. And the court is obviously fairly unimpressed by what it referred to as a blatant failure by Dettori to provide information when asked. He didn't send any legal representatives to the hearing to say, well, actually, no, my bankruptcy shouldn't be extended. And he appears not to have given disclosure as far as the trustees are concerned. Of relevant assets. Now, we don't know what the reasons are for that at the moment, but certainly these are fairly strong words. And when
Harry, can I ask you something? Can I ask you
yeah,
something? When does that become criminal at any stage when you don't
well,
disclose this stuff?
it is a criminal offence to fail to be straightforward, to be honest with your with the trustees in bankruptcy. It's a criminal offence to try and improperly put assets outside of a bankruptcy, and they're serious criminal offences. They carry maximum prison sentences like 7 and 10 years, I think.
That's what I didn't understand reading the story then. So they basically said in court that, or somebody said, whether it's the trustees or whatever, they said that he was concealing assets outside of, he didn't in this
Well, I'm
interview.
not sure they've gone as far as said that he's concealing. I think they say he hasn't
Right.
disclosed. Now there are various reasons he may have taken the wrong.
Right.
He's not always had the greatest tax advice, Frankie Dettori. So he may have taken incorrect advice, for example. So we're just going to be careful. But we can't attribute any motive to anything he's done or seems to have done.
So,
But I think that in order for him to we're a long way off criminal sanction. I think what the judge was saying was you might want to remind him of the sanctions for failing to assist the trustees in the proper way. I think it went no further than that, really. But still, court, that's pretty hardcore for a court to be saying, "I'm extending your bankruptcy, and you might want to think about the criminal sanctions that can come
Yeah.
with."
I suppose I didn't understand when the legal side of it get involved, because you're saying you might want to remind him, but they're saying we've written to him, he's not replied to us, and he's not showed up
Yeah,
here.
but so what he's probably said, all these things are a process. And what tends not to happen is the first time you fail to mention an asset is that you get arrested. So what he's saying is to the trustees, knowing full well probably that it'll get back to Mr. Dettori, it was his way of firing, a shot across his bow, I suspect, to say, you can't carry on like this and just expect this to go away. Now, we don't know why he didn't turn up to the hearing, and we don't know why or even if at the moment we've no evidence that there are these missing assets up beyond
Yeah.
that the trustees appear to think there are. But no, it doesn't look great. And when you put this whole saga, when you put it into the context of this saga, which started with an application by his lawyers to avoid his name coming out in tax proceedings, it's very damaging. This does all appear to be pretty damaging to his reputation, and you wonder, who is going to feel comfortable employing him with this hanging over his head now. It is one thing to be made bankrupt; it's another thing to have your bankruptcy extended by a year. You'd think that ITV, for example, might struggle to have him on over the summer. Ammo, who knows? But again, if someone's going to be your ambassador, this is not the kind of thing that you would, generally speaking, want said about your ambassador. So it's all pretty sorry, really.
Mm.
Exactly. I guess to what extent or to what degree do we think this does affect the Tory going forward? As in, would this in 5 years' time, if this gets sorted in a year, would people still be talking about the Magnificent Seven, etc.? Or is this? I was just wondering how damaging this is, Tony. Have you any view on where have the public really engaged with the story enough for it to be
Um,
long lasting?
the question marks I had down, how he just addressed that. I had ammo job question mark, pundit work, ITV, USA, etc. question mark. Um, these seems to be pretty serious charges. I mean,
I mean, we're a long way off criminal offence, but
yeah.
he'd struggle to get to the USA if he's charged, if there are any criminal sanctions
They might welcome
attached to
him in
this.
these days.
Well, that's true. Might
Might
be a
roll
bit
out the red
different under the
carpet.
current regime, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, when people think of Lester Piggott now, do they think of him being jailed, for tax evasion, avoidance, or whatever the right term is? Um, I think it massively taints um, his reputation. Yes, I do.
Well, it's been a bit death by a thousand cuts, isn't it? It keeps going, this story. And when you throw, the ex-pornographer and well-known, you know, tax eccentric Paul Baxendale Walker into it as the advisor, it all just it's at best really quite embarrassing.
Yeah.
Indeed. We'll leave that there and we'll go on to the Lord Allen resignation and Brant Dunshea obviously appointed as a permanent CEO. So we couldn't really talk about this on the podcast last week, but it was very much on the cards and then it obviously came to light. So Lord Allen's resignation as BHA chair after just 6 months has triggered an extraordinary racecourse revolt with Ascot leading a group of Britain's most powerful tracks in a call for urgent governance reform. News of Allen's departure from the BHA at 9:18 a.m. on Tuesday was followed 22 minutes later by a call from the Jockey Club and leading courses Ascot, Goodwood, Newbury, and York for an urgent review of the Racecourse Association's governance to support industry change. The ultimatum included an endorsement for the establishment of a new independent board at the BHA, which had been one of Allen's conditions for joining the organisation in the first place. The signatories made it clear that they wanted more say in key decisions affecting the sport, while Ascot's chief executive Felicity Barnard said it would be prepared to leave the RSA if necessary. Turbo Group chairman Julian Richmond Watson also gave his support to an independent BHA board. AK, do you want to jump in here first? So obviously Lord Allen's gone was well signposted. That's for me is an absolute mess. But the race courses, well, in specifics, those Ascot, Goodwood, Newbury, and York are talking a big game here to try and kick on from what he was initially brought in for. Do they have a bit of hope here, or can we turn this around, or how are you feeling about it now?
It's just a bit of a mess, isn't it? It's a bit embarrassing. Lord Allen's tenure, short-lived tenure, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Brian Clough at Leeds United, to be honest with you. It's kind of like the damned BHA. It could be the worst film ever now, but yeah, I think he was only 26 full days. I think Cloughy did 44, I think, off the top of my head. But I don't know if he was just trying to change things too fast or too fast for this absolute slow turning ship that is UK horse racing. Um, I thought the Felicity Barnard interview on Nick Luck was brilliant. I thought she was really impressive actually when she spoke. Not many people in horse racing, I think, speak with such clarity of thought and explain some of the issues quite as eloquently as she did. I thought she was really, really good. Um, yeah, what happens? I think she described the situation is the same way we approach betting on horse racing from a bookmaking point of view. She basically said there's 10% of tracks or fixtures or whatever that are essentially premium and have different business models to the other 90%, which are essentially just churning of media rights tracks essentially. And I kind of agree with that, to be honest with you. She gave the situation of, I think the RCA is essentially just ARC. They've so much influence on there. They hold they hold that much influence or that many deciding votes or whatever the correct phrase is, that whatever they want happens. That might as well be
Because
called.
it's one track, one vote.
It's one track, one vote,
Yeah.
and so they're essentially they can just essentially do whatever they want, which means that body might as well be called ARC, bloody Empowerment Association or something like that. Like it's not it's absolutely irrelevant how anybody outside of ARC with like with the model that's not reliant on media rights is part of that organization makes no sense. Um, so it wouldn't surprise me if they left, to be honest with you. It wouldn't surprise me if they probably have hoped that the Lord Allen stuff will come to fruition and what his plans are come to fruition. And he's probably then decided that under this structure, it's absolutely no chance of achieving what I want to achieve, and I'll just bail here. And I think those premium tracks, the Yorks, the good tracks, essentially, the Yorks, the Ascots, Goodwood was mentioned as part of it. Um, why they'd be part of the media right churn, which is the majority of this industry now, just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's fairly depressing. The one non-depressing fact was us winding up the new lad in the office with the market we had, Ronan. I think it was we've a new lad who started in the office, and we had the next. I think I put next CEO up of the BHA, and as a joke, we left him in the office on his own and said we were going to the coffee shop to discuss Cheltenham and our pricing strategy at Cheltenham. We'd be back in 10 or 15 minutes, and we'd set up a test account basically just with fake money in it. And the test account had the surname Dunshea. And we were just sat in the coffee shop on the mobile and requested 35 grand on Brant Dunshea to be the next CEO of the BHA. And the young lad has absolutely panicked. It was funny. Anyway, it made me laugh. And he took it in the spirit that it was intended as well. So all good. All good.
The best part was walking back into the office and he's someone called Dunshea. Oh, fair play.
Graham was like, I just lay it. And fair play to him, he kind of stood up and went, the surname's Dunshea. It was so good.
Oh dear. Yeah. Yeah, my
Very good.
thoughts about it. I mean, I agree with you about the Felicity Barnard interview on Luck's program. it just seems to be, it's Ark's position just seems to be, carrying on from the football theme, nobody likes us, but we don't care kind of attitude. It's not, was that Millwall or something? Millwall fans say that.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, I just can't see Ark budging an inch. And I think the big independents are just exasperated by it, which is why, that literally, as you said, that press release literally dropped in my inbox 20 minutes or so after the Lord Allen's was announced. So, they were lining up they're united, they're lining up their guns against Art, but, I say Martin's got his shareholders, got the Reuben brothers. They aren't going to vote for change, are they? They're just not. So I think a breakaway is looking highly likely. What form that will take, two-tier racing, etc. I'm not sure. But
I mean, it all ties in, doesn't it? With it's all media rights ultimately, this, isn't it? Because and it goes back to the dispute with Betfred. That is the front, I think, that is starting to look most interesting is whether the bookmakers are going to continue paying the media rights charges, because it seems to me that's quite a quick way to bring up to heel is if bookmakers just say, well, we're not paying for this fairly low grade racing.
What happens to the industry if everyone does that? Like, I keep thinking, I know I talk some doomsday scenarios, right? But that is the
Well, but
finance.
is it doomsday? I mean, is it not just that there's not? It's the
Doomsday is
difficulty we
probably the
all have
wrong
with it
word.
is,
Like, there'll be
well,
an explosion.
yeah, I mean, or a black swan or whatever. But isn't
Yeah.
it one that could actually lead to some quite important structural improvements if it would happen? I mean, if bookmakers just said we're not paying for those media rights anymore, then art presumably become less concerned with maintaining the stranglehold over the race day data, and
They've not
then
got money, is the first
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it would. Yeah, but the point is, something would have to change, wouldn't it? At that point,
Yeah.
before they just, they're not just going to let themselves sink to the bottom of the ocean overnight. That something would have to change. And it just seems to me that one of the very strange elements in all of this is that it's almost full circle, which is sort of, bookmakers go, well, it's not very good, this product, and yet they're sort of enabling ARC by paying these media rights deals at the very bottom of the sport for the stuff that no one in racing really wants to watch, in order to keep, some betting churn going on horse racing. So it's all just a bit of a mess. And I wonder if Betfred, that's not resolved itself, has it, Betfred? I was looking the other day. There's still no colours, no
Oh.
data on the site. So, I mean, maybe others are going to start, as you've always pointed out, AK, this is a question of when contracts come up for renewal. We don't really know
It'd be
when others are going to
interesting.
come
I
up.
think the next interesting one is if Betfred hold firm until the next big bookmaker's contract runs out. That's kind of the tipping point.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of the industry's kind of waiting to see what Betfred do, I think, and whether they fold or deal or whatever you want the term to be. Um, if it comes round that the next big firm, I don't know if 365 is 2027, some are probably 2029. It just the order of the next cab off the rank. It'd be interesting if they just go, no, we're not paying it either, and then
Of course,
it
if
becomes seismic then pretty quickly.
your bargaining position becomes good enough, you don't have to wait until the end of the media rights period. You can start making your point now about what
Yeah,
you're
it's
going to
true.
do at the end of the media rights period. So we're not hearing very much about it, but perhaps one of the things that's going on at the moment is that there are a few more people on the kind of taking the Betfred stance than is necessarily known about. I mean, it's pure conjecture, but
And it's also like people always judge it by, oh, what will we lose to other bookmakers and stuff like that. But if everyone didn't, like, I think you're only making a comparison between have and have not. If everyone is have not, you're all the same still. It's
mm, mm.
you're not losing out. So it's
And there are a couple of players that could, if they decided to do it,
oh
it doesn't really matter whether anyone else does. They
yeah.
can if they decided independently. They're just not paying for it.
I can
And
promise you, well, I can't promise you, but I'd be of the belief that stuff like affordability checks has more effect on churn of customers than any kind of thing like horse racing stream, losing horse racing stream and data. I think the stuff that's already been impacted on the industry and enforced on the industry has had more.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because when
Yeah,
again,
negative.
you know, this recent story about the ARC and the board is, you know, the other thing that feeds heavily into it is the tax increases, which again are going to make media rights seem all that more expensive. And this is a fight about media rights, is what this is. That's what the grumbling is within the RCA. It's the ones who think that it's the owners who think that really their revenue is restricted to selling bad racing to bookmakers and don't really put on a very good product. And the others who are kind of, I guess, you know, in the gutter but looking at the stars slightly.
Yeah.
We'll leave that there, gents, and move on to Brant Dunshea's first full day in permanent charge, and caused a bit of controversy as the BHA launched a new initiative. So we'll just give you a background to this. So British Horse Racing Authority has today announced the introduction of an innovative new training fees credit scheme that will see winning and runner-up owners in Grade 1 chase and hurdles in March and April each year receive credits to be redeemed against the training fees of a new horse trained in Britain. The scheme is designed to encourage the ownership and training of jump horses in Britain by both domestic and international owners, and, along with other initiatives, to seek to arrest the decline in the number of highly rated jumps horses in training. With funding totalling £760,000 provided by the Horse Racing Levy Board, the bonus will apply to all Grade 1 hurdle and chase races in Britain in March and April and will be rewarded to the owners of the winning horses with a £20,000 credit. A £10,000 credit will also be awarded to the owners of the runner-up in the same races. So this has caused a bit of a stir, I guess, a very divisive subject, Tony. So tell us what both sides are saying and what way you're coming down on this.
Yeah, well, a lot of trainers instantly come out the struggling end. The middle to lower tiers come out and said, "This is so tone deaf, it's unbelievable." I tweeted as soon as it came out saying this is another example of the obsession of giving money to the top end to owners that don't need it. And within about 10 minutes, I won't say who sent it, but within 10 minutes, someone from the BHA sent me an email pointing out some of what they thought was kind of like salient facts on the opposite side.
But Tony, just to stop you there, is it giving money to owners that don't need it, or is it
Yeah,
giving money to trainers in
uh,
England?
yeah. It's giving training fees. So the
Not
owners,
technically doing any of those things, is it? I don't think.
no,
Sorry.
as Ronan said, it's a training fees credit scheme whereby you're going to get fees kind of like back from it if you have a horse in training. Now, I get the idea. I actually get the idea that the idea is to get owners who are based in Ireland coming to England and the UK with good horses that can run in the Grade
Mm.
Ones, therefore enhancing the quality. I get that, and I actually put that in the tweet. He said it may well be a very good initiative, but the way these things are always termed, there's always it's plenty of carrot, but kind of like no stick, or plenty of stick and no carrot. You've got to. They must have known the way this was going to be received. It's all about it's and it's I'll reference Liz Batchelor's tweet now. Very good on there. She knocked this out very, very quickly. She said, based on the 2025 numbers, this scheme would have looked like this, i.e., owners that would have benefited in the Grade Ones in March and April, where this is initially going to be applied. JP McManus would benefit to the tune of 110,000. The Richies 50,000. Menier and Swade 40,000. Gigginstown 30,000. Ferguson and Mason etc. 30,000. Robcour 30,000. The McNeil family 30,000. 20k bar etc etc. Now that the BHA must have known that was going to be a very, very, very bad look. So I'd always be in favour of these schemes being announced, but also really referencing something that they're doing across the board. Now, one of the things the guy at the BHA emailed me about, he just said, please point out this, and I'm happy to read out what he put. He
Yeah.
said, this investment is one part of a wider package of measures introduced to encourage the breeding, owning, and training of quality horses in Britain. This has also included a £3.2 million increase in prize money in developmental races spread across both codes, as well as extending the elite national hunt mare scheme and the introduction of the GP pointing bonus. A working group with members from across the sport is continuing to work on plans to strengthen the quality of racing in Britain, both over the jumps and flat. And it's also worth pointing out, this got backing from the ROA, the NTF, obviously the levy board, who are putting in 760 grand for this. But I just think in all of this, they should have preempted the pylon that was kind of come on, because if you are
You can't
giving,
preempt a pylon in racing. I mean, you just can't. Doesn't
I,
happen.
no,
uh,
but come on,
The pylon is half the fun of being interested in racing.
you've got people coming out like, very, very sane and very considered people like Richard Hoyles immediately come out and said, and I had a DM conversation with Richard afterwards. He actually said, this just looks like money going to money. And that is the case. And there's other people who pointed out, if you're paying 700 grand from a horse from France, and you want it to be trained by the best trainer, i.e. Mullins, Elliott, whatever, if you consider them to be the best trainer, these kind of training fee credit schemes aren't gonna aren't going to make you want to put that with a Ben Pauling, for example, however impressive he has been in recent years. It's just, I get the intention, and it could well be a very, very good scheme down the line. But this was only going to antagonise, like you said, struggling trainers. And
Well,
they,
funny enough, it did occur to me that it could have part of it could have been to go a step further and not just say you have to have it trained by an English trainer, but they could say it has to be a not one of the
you
top
have to run
British
it as well.
trainers. Yeah, it's to run it, and exactly, it can't just stay there for a year. But it seems to me that that might have been perhaps a step too far to say, it has to be a trainer that's only had a certain number of winners or a certain number of a certain amount of prize money. If you want to kind of, because that strikes me as uh, is there a great deal of point in having these horses sent to the very, very top trainers who are getting decent horses already? I think there probably is. I don't share the negativity about this. I
I,
still think it's worth a try, but I just wonder if there was a way to try and spread better horses out amongst more trainers,
I think
which could be
I
attached
think
to it.
I think your line there summarizes where we're at with ideas. It's worth a try. I think we fund so many ideas that are just worth a try. And I appreciate there's it's part of a wider package and stuff like that. I think a fellow that I know and I used to work with, Dan Heap, says, and it was in response to, and I totally agree with this. It was in response to the Liz Batchelor or whatever her name is tweet regarding the prize money. He says Ricci has four in the UK and more on the way. Henderson, King, Williams, Richards. Donnell is with Henderson. JP has loads. The incremental here is Giggy and Rob Cole. Good luck there. Just looks like a way to. Just looks like it's going to be a subsidy on horses that would have been bought anyway, and there is no method to measure the incremental, and that's what I agree with. I could not agree with that more. Like you
Yeah, but we don't know. I mean, with the greatest
Of course we
respect,
don't. Of course
that
we
is
don't know,
complete
but we can
conjecture on both of your parts. We don't. We
we can.
can. Until you've asked any of the owners, will you just maintain the number of horses you were going to send here anyway, and just pay less for them, or would you actually think, oh, we'll use these free credits to have another horse? Surely someone has done some research into that, you would have
yes,
hoped, before actually coming up with this scheme. So I think that to damn it with pure conjecture about what
Surely
we
someone
think
has
the
done it.
motivations of people that we haven't spoken to are, is a bit harsh.
But that's what you're assuming with your position as well, though.
Yeah, but my point is that they've presumably spoken to some, they must have done some research into
Presumably,
what
yeah.
effect this will.
Sorry, you're making assumptions there, is what I'm
Yeah, well, I
saying.
mean, look,
Yeah,
until if they have put forward a policy, they are the regulator, or not the regulator, the levy, that they're supposed to know how to do these things. I agree that a lot of things don't work, but I think just to assume that we know what owners will react to this policy by doing is quite an assumption. And you
I
might be
think it,
right, but
I think probability wise, I think it's highly likely you're subsidizing rich people with horses they would have bought already. Like that's, I think, I don't care what yes or no. I don't care about.
you mean bought and trained in England already?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I suppose I mean it's quite hard to measure it, but I suppose you look
Rich
at
people that are worth 200 million quid don't send horses to the UK to get 10 grand. They just don't. They
well
do.
they're not getting
They do. They do whatever they want to do. If
well
you've got 200 million
110,000
quid in
pays
the
for
bank,
more than two horses a year, doesn't it?
if you've got 200 million quid in the bank, you do whatever you want to do. A 10,
Yeah, but
20
it might
grand, 50 grand subsidy
yeah.
makes no difference at all to that, in my opinion.
I
Well,
just say, it's just worth reiterating what Harry said. A lot of the constituents of racing were obviously heavily involved in this, but the National Trainers Federation, the racehorse owners, and you'd have to think, like you said, the big owners with the big spending power were actually kind of like consulted on this. But then again, if someone says to you, "What do you think of
yeah.
a scheme whereby you can get 50 to 100 grand credit training fees?" You're going to say,
What's the downside to say, yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, you would, but you would hope that the question would be, would it encourage you to bring more horses? And then you can measure that. That is something that is broadly measurable
yeah.
over a couple of years. So I think that it's, do you know what the other thing is? I think it's fairly creative for horse racing as well as a commercial idea. It might not work, but it is actually, it's an unusually, creative idea, I think. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Like I said, my initial thought is I can understand why all the middle to lower tier trainers and owners, and there've been a lot of syndicate, people with syndicated horses are up in arms about this, and I can understand why they just think it's another example of, this they think the sport is pandering to the rich.
Oh, I
So
do.
that's always been my concern in the £2 million derby, etc. etc. Or the King George going to 1.5, or is it 2 million now? And York with their prize money, etc. I just think there has to be a more even spread of this kind of this is creative. I'll give it that, but
I'll give you creative. What you should do is pick a 0 to 100 in Ireland and say whoever finishes sixth in that race gets 10 grand off a horse in the UK. That'd be the best thing to do to
that'll
get.
be an interesting finish. Been ridden for six, yeah. But yeah,
That'd be more creative.
it's interesting. I mean, I think I was watching Luck on Sunday yesterday, and the four people on the panel, Tom Malone, Nick Luck, Neil Channing, Jamie Snowden, were all in favour of this. And if you were on there, the only five people in the country that agree with the scheme would have been in the same sofa. But
yeah, that's possibly true.
that just struck me as a put up job by the BHC having all four of them agree. But then again, they all have kind of like vested interest.
Well, I think no. Well, wait. I think there is also an element that, as we've always said, is that everyone goes, "You've got to come up with an idea. You've got to come up with some ideas." Not that idea. And yeah, I just think that give it a chance. I don't agree with the people who say that there's no cost, because if it could be quite embarrassing if it goes wrong. Because you really will just be subsidising people who would have been coming anyway. But we would have horses that would have been coming anyway at fairly substantial expense of the for the sport.
Listen,
but I don't see the harm in giving it a go.
Jermaine Jenas was part of the 1.6 million everybody fucking goes racing campaign.
Yeah, but we can't just say that about everything that
but
came
yeah,
along.
well,
It's because
sorry,
every other one was
I'm trying to be
hopeless.
positive here, Harry. I'm saying I'm saying spaffing 100 grand on
Sorry.
this wouldn't be the worst thing.
That's a funny way of being positive. It's not as bad as Jermaine Jenas.
A spaff. I've got visions of Boris Johnson. Unfortunately, we better move on.
Yeah, quite.
Move on, yeah. We'll deal with the Treasury warned by the DCMS about ineffectiveness of plan to exempt racing from betting duty increases. These documents reveal. So the Treasury was warned last year by another government department that a budget carve-out for racing would be insufficient to protect the sport from the impact of steep tax rises on betting. The Department for Culture, Media and Sports assessment of proposal initially put forward by the Social Market Foundation, a think tank that advocated for large increases to betting tax, except for racing, which would have had duties lowered and the levy rate paid by bookmakers doubled, was revealed in documents seen by the Racing Post. DCMS said racing was unlikely to feel any benefit from being exempt from rises in betting tax, and I quote, unless it was accompanied by an increase to the horse racing betting levy. Freedom of information requests submitted to DCMS also show the Treasury had been informed of the likely knock-on impact betting duty rises would have on prices and offers bookmakers would provide for their customers, and that people would, with higher markers of harm, would potentially move into the black market. So, AK, they were told, they were warned, it was given to them there, and they kicked
Said it
on
every
here.
week. We said it every week. Um,
If they're not listening to the DCMS, they're certainly not listening to us.
for the first thing I thought when I read this was, I wonder who put in the freedom of information request. That was one of my. It was unspecified, but I thought that'd be just an interesting piece of
I
information.
think it might have been the Racing Post,
Was it? That's quite interesting if
I
it
think
was.
so. I'm not entirely sure.
So that was one thing I didn't know the answer to. My whole thing with this is, you've seen it on previous episodes. I probably don't need to go into it. One thing I would say was, and I've spoke to people that are on both sides of the fence in this, and most of them tend to be. One thing I would say is, even people that are of my way of thinking come up to me and say, "Yeah, oh, I did speak to James Nice. Oh, he's a nice fella. Oh, he's obviously a very clever fella." And I just don't think whether it's all disingenuous or not. I think he's thick as pig shit, is what I think.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I genuinely think he has no comprehension or is masking his conclusions are pre-derived already. I think he's dumb as anything. And this was obvious from a long way out. And as I've said before, I won't harp on about it. As I've said before, I think it'll be worse than is predicted. And he's just not an intelligent person at all. Can speak with as many accents and degrees as he likes and can speak with a plummy voice, and he's an idiot. He's an absolute idiot, and I've no time for him or anything that he thinks. And the people who've listened to him have created this situation.
Do you want to come in there at all, maybe on just, does this sort of thing happen at all a lot in the government? As in, I feel like they're warned about different people that come to them and say, if you do this, this is what's gonna happen, and they just treat it all as chatter from everywhere and decide what they're going to do anyway.
I think that the government needed to increase taxes at the point it was in, and I think, as we discussed at the time, there was a movement which led to a very fertile ground within gambling in the run up to the budget for gambling to be the place to increase those taxes. I think what it shows is that there are who is powerful in this debate, and it's bizarrely, when you think of the commercial might of these bookmakers, it's the reformers. They have completely outmaneuvered everyone. And there's an element, I think, of tail wagging the dog, or huge leverage. They've hugely leveraged their position through good lobbying and good, whatever it is that they're doing. They're doing it very well, because they appear to be able to say things and give advice that is vastly more impactful than anything that's being said on the other side. So without going down the sort of rabbit's warren again of the whole story, I think probably that's really all that's worth saying at this stage.
I think when this all comes out in the wash, and when we talk about this retrospectively in years gone by, I think the appointment of Avik Bhattacharya uh, into a position of power will be something that is scrutinized and assessed from a what went wrong perspective. That's what I think.
Let's deal quickly with the story on Andrew Rhodes, outgoing Gambling Commission chief executive, linked to a role in the wider sector. So the Gambling Commission has said action had been taken to prevent conflicts of interest after it was reported that outgoing Chief Executive Andrew Rhodes is set to take up a role in the wider sector. Sky News claimed Rhodes is due to lead the industry regulator at the end of next month, had been in talks to join Hawk Bridge, a new international strategic advisory firm focused on the gambling industry. Harry, do you want to come in here on this story here?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is I don't think that he's done anything wrong by the book. It's very typical in the world of politics, for example, for people to move from positions or in public bodies or public jobs into the private sector and then advise people who might what need advice on how people in public bodies might react to certain things or might behave because of course they've got that insight. I think on this one, the fact that it's been reported on, the fact that the Gambling Commission felt the need to say there's been no conflict of interest does look like perhaps from a personal reputational point of view, he could have Mr. Rose might have preferred that there was a bit more of a gap between because I think he's still at the Gambling Commission, which means that presumably these negotiations have gone on while he was at the Gambling Commission. Now he's I think he's on gardening leave, or some description, and the Gambling Commission says it's taken all the necessary steps, but yeah, I think it's perhaps less than stellar, but that's not to say he's done anything wrong. And I think it's you can't hold him to standards that aren't the different to those in other branches of power wielding institutions. This sort of stuff does happen all the time. I don't think there's any problem with someone working at the Gambling Commission moving in to advising. But I suppose one of the things is that he's had a fairly controversial period, particularly amongst operators, period of tenure, and affordability checks are still considered to be a complete disaster. And I suppose the irony is that he now goes into a job where presumably one of the things he'll be advising
How to get rid of it.
operators on is affordability checks. So he's done absolutely nothing wrong, but you can see why people within the industry might be a bit miffed.
We'll do our last topic. So Bet365 pull out of long-standing sponsorships at Newmarket Haydock, citing rises in the gambling tax. So Bet365 become the latest bookmaker to end long-running sponsorship in Britain due to gambling taxes rises announced in last year's budget. The betting giant have axed their backing of the Old Newton Cup and Lancashire Oaks at Haydock after 23 years, as well as withdrawing from title sponsorship of the Craven meeting in Newmarket and races at the July meeting, which had been part of their portfolio since 2017. So the way they asked about this on Look on Sunday was, is this just a posturing from Bet365 AK, or is this an actual reality of the situation?
I think it's the reality. Like I said again previously, just as tenures and sponsorships become available or come up for renewal, you're going to see much less renewing happening. Whether people do renew certain stuff, just in particular horse racing, I think is there any danger that Paddy Power won't sponsor the darts? No, brilliant sponsorship, works really well for them, unbelievable, great decision, will carry on. Stuff in horse racing just adds no incremental value. It's always been a loss leader, and just in a time of higher tax and everything, loss leaders just aren't going to be tolerated on expensive products. I think in the same week, Bet365 became the official partner of the UFC in America. They're investing heavily in sports and products that make sense for them financially, and horse racing probably isn't one of those.
Seems the way. Anyone else want to come in on that, or will we move on to
I
our
think we've
one
done
and
this
only
one
question?
I think we've done this one to death
Yes,
over recent months.
indeed. So let's finish on a more positive note and bring in Cheltenham again. We had a few questions, but I think we answered them among the topics there. So thanks for everyone who sent them in, and hopefully we got to your question or answered it in some way. But we have a question from Mike Quigley who asked, I know it's not a tipping operation, but how about each of you give your Cheltenham nap? Harry Stewart Moore, you were very keen for this. Um,
Yeah.
so let's hear it. What's the millions going on this week?
Well, my nap is absolutely do not listen to better podcasts if you want to make any money at anything, frankly. But as I was saying to you beforehand, I can barely name a runner, I'm afraid, this year because of various trials I've had in recent weeks. So my nap is just, if you're asking us, stop.
Yeah.
AK, what are you liking this week, or how are you going to
Tough
look at it
to
from your own gambling point of view?
tough to follow Harry's advice there, but on the back end, again, please gamble responsibly and within your means. But the biggest bet I've had this week is on Ireland to win the Presbury Cup at 1-6. I have quite a large bet on that.
You're
Five.
taking the piss. Are
No,
you?
no. I've had a 5-figure bet. I was actually hard panicking when I heard about the furries yesterday. To be honest with you, that's why I was tracking. That's why I was tracking
Oh,
it.
that's why you were
That's why I was
tracking the
tracking it so
ferries.
much.
I still thought, why is that? I was thinking that makes no sense. Yeah, okay.
I've had a really good bet on Ireland at 1-6 to win the Presbury Cup. I've bet them -5.5 on the handicap at about 11-10 evens and 10-11. What else have I had? I've backed Ireland 17 on more. Again, around the same price as the -5.5. And I've backed Gordon Elliott at 6-4 without Willie Mullins.
You would have been good on Look on Sunday yesterday. They were all giving it the big one for a British fight back. They were, I think, Tom Malone said it was going to be level or something, and he was pretty adamant about it. He was,
AK, best not bet, Tom.
Yeah.
there you
You
go,
get the
Tom.
best price in the industry, I can promise
It's only because he's probably bought about 300 of the horses
Yeah.
yeah.
going to Cheltenham from the UK this year with a very large add-on percentage. But yeah,
So,
actually, you must have read my notes because what the two things I don't want to hear about on the ITV coverage this week is the Ireland v England
Yeah, I know.
battle. I think it's tiresome, and I don't think anyone gives a toss. But obviously,
you won't hear much about
if
it. There
Anthony's got
won't be
the
much of a battle after Wednesday. Don't worry about it. It's all
if
good.
Anthony's got the best part of 100 grand involved, yes, I can see why he would want minute by minute updates on that. Uh, Before I get on to what I'm intending to back, I'm going to wait to the final fills. The other thing I don't want to hear is after every race, punters won, bookmakers nil.
Yeah,
Punters
that's another
won,
boring one. Yeah. Yeah.
bookmakers equalise. They go 2-1 up. They go 3-1 up. What a load of bollocks that is. I fully intend
It's
to.
probably true, though.
What?
It is
It's
true.
late. You know as well as anybody else. There is not a collective of punters and there's not a collective of bookmakers who do exactly the same thing. Therefore,
No, there isn't. But when you go off,
you can't announce a result after a race. Oh, that's one for the punters. Bollocks. It's absolute.
well, if you look at a field book, 60%, 65% of the money will be on the favourite, 25% will be on the second favourite, and the rest will be distributed. We might, same with social media and bubbles, we might socialize and interact with people that's in our bubble, which might be 5-1 plus bracket. But when they do that, they're basically recording has the favourite or the second favourite won or finished second, essentially. It's
Yeah, I
that's
think
what
it'd
it
be
is. That's
better
the
if they were
point of
saying
me
favorite
voting like it.
backers. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think
that's what it
Tony's
is.
point is there aren't people just going yes, another one, who have no financial interest. Just go, oh, fantastic,
Yeah.
sitting at
Well,
home with like flags that say, "Come on, the punters."
I suppose you can't mark it as winning favs versus non-winning favs. But
Yeah, no, it's not so easy,
there's,
but yeah,
I've obviously, AK's obviously got that line served up for when Brian Gleeson goes over to him and just says,
I'm
"Oh,
gonna.
is that one for the
Mate,
punters or one for the
I
bookmakers?"
swear to God, if he comes over to me and does an interview, I'll get that in there. I'll say, "Geez, the punters are 3-2 ahead here." Tony Calvin was on to me and he said the punters
Yeah.
are 3-2 up. So
Yeah, but we've only had two races. So how can that be? Yeah, so I think you're currently going. 10-1 Golden Ace. I think that's a very good each way bet in the
It
Champion.
is. It's probably 2.7 a place or something.
So yeah, I thought it was a good. I know Lossy Mouse in now, but not long ago that was best price 13-2. I think the tens is an overreaction. I think you're 2 points bigger than the next person.
It's such a weird race because it's going to be hard to kick those two out of the three. I think it's not. It's not a very deep.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's Lossy Mouth has probably nicked one of the three places on offer, but I still think the tens is an overreaction. I think that you'll get.
Lossy is going to nick the first place. Never mind one of the three.
I think you'll be accommodated at the tens, although it's 10.5, 11-1 on the exchange win only. And I'm looking once the decks are out, I'll be looking to Dutch Marchand 2 and Improtois about 8s and 12s in the or bigger in the stairs hurdle. But again, my betting, I've had literally nothing anti-post, and I'm just going to wait to the final field. So no shows don't kill me.
I always say it every year, but one of the biggest pieces of advice is just wait for Tuesday morning. Wait for Tuesday morning.
Golden Ace is a classic example. Like I said, it was 13-2 sevens top price this time last week, and now you can get tens. It's wait, and also you take out all the losers from your anti-post book 100%. As well.
And you can guarantee there won't be a single 13-2 docket on Twitter about Golden Ace anywhere. Now that is 10.
Just to correct you a tiny bit there, Tony, we're 9-1 Golden Ace. When you said
you were 10-1 before Tony said anything. Yeah.
Typical. It's like a winning punter ringing up and say, "Yeah, can I have 500 quid on that horse?" Oh no, sorry. As soon as you put the phone down and knocked him, you nick up 2 points off that horse's price.
Did
he just? It's 2026. Did he just simulate ringing up to place a bet? Jesus, what times? What? We in the ice age?
Yourself on personal interaction. You can speak to a customer service person, and then you're reneging on that now. It's terrible.
No, so AK Bet's the only phone line customer service where people just answer with the word "what."
We just play the holding message is everyone alerts by REM. I think
I don't know what you want, but the answer's no.
Yeah. How did you get this number?
Right, gents, that'll do it for another podcast. Best of luck to everyone having a bet this week, and enjoy the week. It's probably the best betting week of the year for me anyway. Thanks to everyone for their questions. Thanks to Mike for his question that we answered, and hopefully the other questions got answered somewhere along the way. And thanks to the lads for their contributions, and of course, thanks to you for listening. Sorry,
to end it off, if you're having a bet in the Supreme, the Arkle, or the Champion Hurdle on Tuesday, AK.bet will have the best prices around.
-1 point.
That's a guarantee. All right, cheers. Have a good week, everyone. We'll talk to you this time next week.